In this edition of Locked On Capitals, your Washington Capitals fall to the Coyotes by a score of 3-2. Alex Ovechkin passes Gordie Howe for the most goals on one team, and you can add one other player to the injured list. Let's talk about all of that and more next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, and I want to thank you for making this your first listen or view of the day. Yes, this podcast is also available in video form, so head on over to YouTube and check it out. And when you're on YouTube, make sure and hit that subscribe button. And if you like the videos, give it a thumbs up. It really helps grow the channel. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So the Capitals lose once again to a team that they really should have beat. You know, they were ahead for a good chunk of the game, and that wheel kind of fell off towards the end of the game there. But, you know, this is one of those kind of trap games that I was talking about where the Capitals go in and they think that it's going to be a slam dunk. And what was really shown tonight was the tenacity and the struggle and the perseverance of that Coyotes team. It is a team that is, to a certain extent, kind of a laughing stock around the NHL because they're playing at Mullet Arena in Arizona, where the capacity is 4,700 fans. So you got to think to a certain extent that there's a chip on the shoulder for this Coyotes team, and I think that it's a young and up and coming team. I want to say that they said that they were the third oldest team in the NHL. So, there is a lot of young players. There's a lot of established players there. There's a couple of former Capitals that are playing on that team. So it is a team that's searching for an identity. So just to start it off here, that's what we will talk about in this show, is how your Washington Capitals do in fact fall to the Coyotes by a score of 3-2. Again, this was a trap game that the Capitals went into. They should have won this game by all rights. They should have won this game. There's no reason that they didn't. And once again, I don't mean to sound like a bit of a broken record, but Darcy Kuemper did keep the Caps in the game. He made 23 saves on 26 shots. So not a lot more you could ask for out of Darcy Kuemper. Ultimately, he kept the Capitals in there. And, one of the things is, again, like I talked about, in the previous podcast, is just playing a full 30-period game. That's what you have to do. Anthony Mantha and Alex Ovechkin get on the board. And it was an historic night for Alex Ovechkin, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. But just talking about the game, Anthony Mantha gets on the board. This is in Washington hockey now. After going without a goal for 7 straight games, Anthony Mantha was determined to get it going. He got some good looks, and finally his hard work paid off. Mantha scored a much-needed goal early in the third period, capitalizing on a turnover and spinning around before backhanding it to make it 2-0. It was the 27-year-old's fourth goal of the season, and he ended up getting it past Vejmelka. I think that, Vejmelka is going to be one of those goalies that's going to be good for quite some time. It was pretty evenly dueled between Darcy Kuemper and Vejmelka out there. So, I think, despite what you see around the Coyotes, I do think that in time, if they can keep some of those players on the team that you saw out there tonight, then I think that the future for that team could be good in years. Once they get established in their own arena once again, and they can kind of see some of those younger players kind of come to terms and grow up a little bit. But the Capitals, they did struggle tonight, and they end up losing one other game. So they're kind of going in the wrong direction here. And how do they turn it around? That is the question. However, the same pattern came back to plague DC. Washington let a 2-0 lead disappear as Josh Brown was easily able to beat Kuemper with him down in the crease before Nick Ritchie shot beat Kuemper high just minutes later. The lead and good vibes vanished as the team dropped a lead for the fourth straight game. Wow, that is me hitting my nose against the microphone here. The frustration is really kind of starting to set in for this Capitals team as they are struggling to find a way to win a game against a team that, is one of the worst in the NHL. I know what I said, that they're on the rise, but if you want to put them in comparison to the rest of the league, they should have won this game. They were playing at home. They were playing in those reverse retro jerseys, which, let's kind of talk about that for a moment. They look amazing. If you guys watch the game tonight, hit me up on Twitter at DanCaps218 or at Locked On Caps and let me know what you thought about those jerseys. I thought they looked amazing. I could see them being the future home jerseys for the team, but ultimately it was not enough as the Capitals fell once again. Then, with 35.4 seconds left in the game, Richie scored his second of the night to lead Arizona to the win. No excuses, obviously, Ovechkin said of the loss. It starts from us leaders, and we can't blame injuries on it. Every player who plays in the NHL has some level to play in. Obviously, we miss those guys, but right now the situation is we have to pull on the rope with all our hands and don't panic and don't think it's over. We just have to bounce back and play together as a team, as a group. And, that's what it's about. It's about playing together as a team. A team is never as good as they are when they're playing their best. They're never as bad as they are when they're playing their worst. That was from Capitals Penguins 24/7. Road to the Winter Classic, if you guys remember that one. And, that I'm always reminded of that when I watch this Caps team, and inevitably there's always some high points and there's always some low points. And this is a low point. This Caps team is facing a lot of injuries, and it's nothing new. There's a lot of injuries around the NHL, but they have to find a way to persevere. What is the one thing that I hear on Twitter? What's the one thing I hear on YouTube all the time? We need to get younger. Well, this is a really great opportunity for this Caps team to see what they have in their younger players, what they have in the tank. As you saw, Garrett Pilon got called up. Sonny Milano was in the lineup tonight. Lucas Johansson is on the team. And, there are a lot of players that could get their opportunity. Joe Snively and Connor McMichael, all these players that we've heard about for some time. This is their time to shine, to see what they have in the tank. And I know that today they went out and they made an acquisition. Today they signed Nicholas Aube-Kubel from Toronto, and a name that I have heard around. Ultimately didn't work out for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He played rather well with the Avalanche last year, but the Caps are looking for someone to help fill these spots on this team. You got to kind of stockpile your options a little bit. I know that we had all these call-ups. We had Sonny Milano, which, I mean, let's be honest, he played amazing tonight. He has a nose for the puck and a nose for the net. I do see a really, really bright future for Sonny Milano on this team. A+ marks for Brian McClellan going out and signing this guy for $700 and I want to say $75,000. That is cheap in NHL terms. So I think that, from what I saw in a small sample size, considering that Sonny had 0 practices with this team except for maybe the pregame skate, he played amazing and, a bright spot in an otherwise not so great game. I do think that he will play very well. You also notice that Kuznetsov is back on the top line. Kuznetsov, it has some pretty good wheels to him, and I think that Kuznetsov and Ovechkin work better. They tried that Strome on the top line, and ultimately they didn't get that kind of production that they were looking for, so Strome is back down on the second line. But I do like the way the lineup that they had out there tonight. I would keep going forward with that. Yeah, Protas on the fourth line, left wing. You got McMichael, and then it was Milano, and then Ovechkin on the left wing there. So I think that was pretty stout. I think that was pretty solid. I think they're going to probably tinker with that a little bit there, but that's what they're doing. They're trying to find some traction here, anything to get them some wins here. They tried flip-flopping Kuznetsov and Strome, and they didn't get the outcome that they were looking for. So then they put Kuzi back on the top and put Strome down. I like that fit. I think that that is a good fit going forward. And I guess it ultimately remains to be seen going forward what they go with, but they do need to pick up a big win because this schedule is not getting any easier for this Capitals team. They're playing the Edmonton Oilers. They're playing the Lightning. They're playing the Penguins. These are all great teams. Maybe you've heard of a guy on the Oilers called McDavid. He's one of the best. So you got to know that that Oilers team is going to pull the kitchen sink out of the wall and throw it at the Capitals. The Capitals have to grab that sink and throw it back at them and say, "You're not beating us." They got to find a way to pick up a win against a formidable opponent, and the Oilers will be that and then some. So the Capitals just, they didn't get lucky tonight. And sometimes that's what it is luck. They were leading for a lion's share of the game. They kind of took their eyes off the ball a little bit, the puck in this case, and they ended up losing a game that they were leading in for a lion's share of the game. How do they go forward? How do they fix that? Those are the questions that need to be answered, because you don't want to go in too much of a losing spiral here and then fall down the standings much further. So Caps don't have a lot of time to figure it out. I've talked about this a lot in the show, but I do think they have that tenacity. I do think they have what it takes to figure it out, because if you take a look at it now, if you just give up now, I mean, then the season is over completely. What they need to do is solidify these players that they have out on the ice, figure out which ones are working, which ones aren't working, and move forward with what they have. All right, so after the break here, we will talk about the historic night of Alex Ovechkin as he passes Gordie Howe for the most goals on one team. We'll talk about that next. If you've thought about securing your home with home security but have been putting it off, you'll want to listen up. Right now, Locked On Capitals listeners can order the #1 rated Simply Safe home security system for 50% off. This is their biggest offer of the year, and you won't want to miss it. Here's why I love it. Did you know over the holidays, property crimes like burglaries and package theft spike nationally? That's why our friends at Simply Safe Home Security are offering 50% off their award-winning security system so that more families can feel safe and secure this holiday season. Order your Simply Safe system for half off today and enjoy security and a greater peace of mind during this holiday season. Here's why I loved it. I had an issue where someone broke into my house. I used Simply Safe. They dispatched the police and took care of the situation. So that's what you have to do here. It's just call them, and they have their staff that is in place to help set you up, so you have that security. When someone's breaking into your house, to have someone like Simply Safe with 24/7 protection, it's a great feeling. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture crucial evidence and verify the threat is real, so you can get priority police response. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system I recommend. Get 50% off any new Simply Safe system at simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl. This is their biggest discount of the year, so don't wait. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen today. Now make your second listen Locked On Game to Game. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NHL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it's your team every day. In this episode, we are talking about the Capitals, and in the first segment, we were talking about how they didn't get the result that they were looking for on Saturday as they fell to the Coyotes, but it was a historic evening for one, Mr. Alex Ovechkin. It seems like it's always historic when he is out on the ice, and today was no exception as he passed Gordie Howe for the most goals on one team. As the Washington Capitals don their reverse retro sweaters, they saw vintage Alex Ovechkin takes the ice and make history, but they also saw old habits return and ultimately lost. Ovechkin scored his 787th career goal and Anthony Mantha got on hand. I don't know what it is. We just haven't done enough to win questions Van Riemsdyk. But what was the great moment, he said tonight, was watching Alex Ovechkin play great hockey. This was in Washington Hockey Now. The Capitals saw him make history once again as he broke Gordie Howe's all-time record in a reboot of a very sweater he started his career in. With 8:55 left in the second period and just seconds left to operate on the power play, Ovechkin rifled a one-timer from the left circle, still in the vicinity of his office, past Vamelka to make it 1-0. The power play goal was career number 787 and moved him past Howe for the most goals with one franchise in NHL history. And again, this is one of the things that I talked about in the last podcast is when you watch these games, it is history being broken every single time. It seems like he's out on the ice. He's either tying a record or beating a record or just within a couple goals of a record. So, if you just watch him play, if you even want to watch the Capitals just to watch Alex Ovechkin play, I could see that because, when his career is all said and done, we'll look back on him and say he was one of the greatest, if not the greatest players ever on this team. And Alex Ovechkin scores on the power play to give the Caps a 1-0 lead. Like I talked about, it marks Alex Ovechkin's 787th goal. Ovechkin is now 13 goals away from 800, 15 from passing Howe for the second on the NHL's all-time goal list, and 108 from breaking Gretzky's all-time scoring record of 894. With his goal tonight, Ovechkin also passes Adam Oates, for the 19th most points in NHL history. Ovechkin has now scored the first goal of a game 132 times, which marks the second most game-opening goals in NHL history, which was held by Jaromir Jagr. So, it's not just one goal. It's not just the goal of him wanting to pass Wayne Gretzky or catching Gordie Howe. It's all these other subsequent goals that we talk about the most goals on one team. And then he has another one coming up with the most goals on the road. It seems like when his career is all said and done, he's going to have a lot of records and a lot of different things. So just a really great moment, like I talked about in the last podcast, to be a fan of the Capitals, to be a fan of Alex Ovechkin, but not even if you're a fan of the Capitals in general. This is a good time to be just a fan of the NHL because it doesn't really matter who you're rooting for. You are witnessing history on the ice. You're not watching some archival footage of Wayne Gretzky, some grainy footage from the 1980s. You're watching in real time Alex Ovechkin breaking all these records, and it's a really special time. I was at, I was going to say the Verizon Center because that's what it was called when I was there, but Capital One Arena, to just see him, when I was there, I saw him get, I want to say, I don't remember. It was another goal record. It was from 5 years ago. I don't remember what it was, but they had a ceremony for him there, but it was really special. I remember to see him beat this record and then also have a ceremony afterwards. It was just a really special moment, and that's what I'm talking about. If you can find a way, if you're not in the DC area, to make it to Capital One Arena and watch him play, it's a really special moment. Oftentimes at pregame skates, you can get right down to the next to the glass, and I remember thinking, how cool is it that I'm right here, the glass is right here, and he's right on the other side of the glass. Just a really cool thing, because if you live outside the DC market and you watch a lion's share of the games on television, you don't really respect, what it is. You just see him as almost this television character. But if you can get a chance to go see them play live, and again, if you go to the pregame skates, you can walk right next to the glass where they're shooting the puck, and you'll just see him right on the other side of the glass. A really, special moment that you can kind of take into consideration and just hold it for what it is, because you are witnessing and you're looking at one of the greatest players of all time. Even back then, even 5 years ago, he had broken all kinds of records when I saw him play. But just if you can do it, just a really special night for when I was there with my wife for my 40th birthday. 5 years, man, how the time flies. But just a really special moment for Alex Ovechkin, and we do look forward to him passing Gordie Howe and Wayne Gretzky at some point. It is in sight, and and as long as there's not some sort of major injury, I think that Alex Ovechkin is on pace, and he's on the right trajectory to end up passing a Gordie Howe and eventually Wayne Gretzky. It's just going to take a little bit of time. All right, so after the break here, we are going to talk about the myriad of injuries. Yes, there's a new one every game, and who is it this game? We'll talk about that next. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it is your team every day. In this last segment, we are talking about the injuries facing this Capitals team. Yes, another player goes down, Dmitry Orlov. I mean, he is one of the integral pieces of the on the team on the blue line. He's also a two-way player. He's a good defenseman, but he also has that good scoring touch. Washington Capitals defenseman Dmitry Orlov is questionable to return after suffering a lower body injury on Saturday against the Coyotes, writes Washington Hockey Now. Orlov was out there for the start of the game, but hadn't played after the first period. It is unclear exactly what happened. The team is calling it a lower body injury, so we're going to go ahead and take that generic label and just slap it on the side of it. It is unfortunate to the Capitals, who are already without a bunch of different players. If Orlov is out, that leaves Washington without two top defensemen. As we know, John Carlson is out as well. So if we take a look at the list of players, Capitals currently nursing injuries: Dmitry Orlov, lower body; John Carlson, lower body; Beck Malenstein, finger; TJ Oshie, lower body; Connor Brown, ACL; Carl Hagelin, eye hip; Tom Wilson, ACL; Nick Backstrom, hip. I cannot recall a time in Capitals history where there has been so many injuries at one time. It is unreal. When we were talking about this team in the preseason in the summer, that's how stacked they were when they picked up Connor Brown and Dylan Strome and Darcy Kemper, and all these players were like, wow, this team is going to really make a good push because they are stacked. Well, I guess, the injury bug took a curveball and just really hung it and connected. And what we saw here is the Capitals are facing a myriad of injuries. So, you can take a look at it in a negative light. I choose to look at it as an opportunity for these young players that we see, and hear about all the time, to get their opportunity to play, right? We always hear all the time that, I only wish, that this team is so old and they won't let any of the younger guys play. This is their opportunity to end up going out and playing. And one of the other acquisitions that they made today to help rectify that situation is the Capitals claim, Kubel to help address the injury. They sign Nicholas Abe-Kubel from the Toronto Maple Leafs. They pick him up, shall we say, off the waiver wire. The Washington's Capitals are turning to their waiver wire to solve their injury woes and will take a chance on Nicholas Abe-Kubel. The Capitals have claimed the forward off waivers from the Maple Leafs to make space for him, as they were at the 23 skater limit. They assigned Garrett Pilon back to the AHL Hershey Bears. So Pilon didn't really get his opportunity to shine on the big team. But that is a name, Kubel, that I recognize. I remember that he played rather well for the Avalanche, and then he went and signed that deal with the Maple Leafs and just never really jumped off the page. Kubel inked a 1-year deal, $1 million contract with the Maple Leafs back in July. However, things haven't exactly gone according to plan, as he played in just 6 games and went without a point. However, he did have a whopping 21 hits over that span. Toronto recognized the fact that he had a shorter offseason following his Stanley Cup win with the Avalanche. Ultimately, though, the Leafs placed him on waivers. The 26-year-old winger started last year with the Flyers and had 1 assist in 7 games before being traded to the Avalanche. With Colorado, Kubel posted 11 goals and 11 assists in 67 games and also appeared in 14 playoff games en route to the Stanley Cup. Yes, he is the one who accidentally dropped and dented the trophy when he slipped coming into the group photo. So, not some real positive karma, I guess, or whatever you want to call it with him. But, really great opportunity for him and a Caps team that is, like I talked about, facing a myriad of injuries. If they can go out and pick up a guy like this, Hopefully he can help solidify the team. Kubel is a gritty fourth line role player who can play with grit and help generate pressure on the forecheck while playing well in his own hand. He would fit in well on the fourth line with Nick Dowd and Garnet Hathaway and would be a great fill-in with Beck Malenstein on the shelf. As we know that Malenstein faced that injury, his finger, as he slid in front of a puck. When I saw that, I did not think that was a finger injury, but I'm not a doctor. As it turned out, his hand must have been down and, the puck caught it. And you know what happens. He ended up hurting his finger and he's going to miss some substantial time. The Capitals also saw, like I talked about, Sonny Milano play in tonight. And I was always, ever since I heard that the Capitals signed him, I was excited to see what he had. Just kind of taking a look at his stats. He was drafted rather high, so the Capitals able to pick him up off a PTO from the Calgary Flames, and it just seems like what I saw tonight is he has a good eye for the puck. He has a good eye for the net. I mean, he had a few scoring opportunities anyway, so that's what they're looking for. They have a lot of their money tied up in a lot of players, so they don't have the money to go out and sign this big marquee name. But, the one thing about Brian McClellan is he can kind of find the diamonds in the rough. And in this case, he found Sonny Milano, and I think that Kubel is another guy that will fill in well on this team, and it's worth a shot. At this point, we're dealing with a long laundry list of players that are out. We need all the help we can get. And if they can kind of stack up these options, because ultimately they're not all going to work out, of course, but even if a couple of these guys can work out and help this Caps team turn things around, they're losing too many games in a row now. And what I'm saying is, though, the wheel's going like this, but the more they lose, the more the wheel starts to wobble. And that's when things can kind of go off the rails. And, when we take a look at this, these are some of the last remaining years with Alex Ovechkin on this team. We want to make the most of them. We want to make as many runs for the cup as we can. They went out and solidified net minding. They went out and filled all these roles, and then the injury bug hit. But in any case, they have to persevere. They have to pull their straps up and figure out a way to win these games. And good for Brian McClellan going out once again and picking up these players and Sonny Milano and Kubel. Let's hope these guys can come and help this Caps team pick up some big wins, because Lord knows they need it. And hopefully they can, kind of inch their way up the standings. The one thing I will say, the Capitals are lucky is that the Metropolitan Division is a bit of a dumpster fire right now. No one is taking the reins of the Metro and claiming it as their own. So the Capitals, just like the other teams in the division, should just, keep playing, keep winning. And, at least get back into the win column. We've lost too many games in a row right now that if the Caps can get back in the win column and slowly inch their way up, I think that, as long as one of these other teams doesn't catch fire, I think the Capitals will be in a really good position to do some great things. Thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen. Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest news from around the NHL and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. All right. Once again, thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.